that, for example, that's why Taylor Swift released her versions of these albums that originally were recorded, and the masters were held by somebody else, and that other somebody else refused to sell back to her the rights to those particular sound recordings. So she created her own re-recordings of her albums, Taylor's version, and that's why she did that. It's for a copyright reason. This way, she was compensated for the playing of those records, as opposed to this other person that she no longer wanted to be in business with.
What a brilliant young businesswoman she is.
I would agree.
She is super intelligent.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
would agree. She's quite smart.
Why didn't Prince just do that?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that just can't afford that. Just to go back into it's costs a lot of money to go back in the studio. It's recording time is very, very precious.
Welcome to Gratitude Geek. I'm Kandas Rodarte. I have been looking forward to this conversation for weeks. Today, I'm joined by intellectual property attorney Kevin Thompson. We have stuff to chat about.
Yes, we do, Kandas.
Welcome, Kevin.
Well, thanks. I appreciate being on Gratitude Geek.
So before we jump into all the questions, I'm sure everyone listening who is even remotely creative is waiting with bated breath to hear what you have to say about AI and intellectual property. But before we get into that, you grew up on a small farm in Wisconsin, and now you're an intellectual property expert. Tell me how you got from there to here.
Well, great. Yeah, my father was a professor for the University of Wisconsin-Madison that taught basically agriculture teachers how to be better teachers, and the farm was his hobby. And so we had corn, soybeans, and a pick-your-own strawberry business, Thompson Strawberries. And we had fun with that for a good number of years, but my parents moved to Florida while I was in law school. I've always been interested in computers and how they interface with intellectual property, whether that be protecting software through copyright. So I was naturally interested in intellectual property. And so I started taking classes, in computer science, that kind of stuff. And when I was interested finally going to law school, I wanted to take as many intellectual property courses as I could. So I've been very lucky in my career to be able to practice what I love. A lot of days just having creative, fun things. And yeah, some days it doesn't really seem like work.
Okay, I can't let this go. We can't move on until we dig into this deeper. Your family farm was a hobby.
My dad's hobby, yeah. We didn't have a lot of equipment of our own, so like when time came to harvest, we had to borrow a harvester from our neighbor. So there were a few years where like our corn didn't get harvested until the spring, which by the way makes it not suitable for human consumption. Because it's been laying out in the field all winter. But then it's field corn for animals. But that was the downside of it being his hobby. He's a professor, and he would farm on the weekends or in the evenings as necessary.
So running a farm, it is a full-time job.
It
It's a
certainly
business.
is.
It's a business. So
Right.
what did you learn about business from this farm?
It was, other than the strawberry business was run as a for-profit, enterprise. There I learned a lot about, customer service. It was my job to, well, the joke was we would weigh the people on the way in and out, depending on how much they ate, while they were picking their own strawberries. But it was my job to check people in, send them off to my sister. My sister got them, to the field and got them their picking spot. But then again, it was my job to weigh out them at the end, their boxes. You had we'd figured out the tare weight of the TARE weight of the boxes. So we subtracted that from the weight of the strawberries, and lo and behold, that's how much we charged them. And it was a fairly fun, few weeks every year, when it was an active strawberry picking. But then, of course, you also had to put in a lot of work. You had to maintain the fields. You had to hoe the strawberries, which my dad would complain about because we were never as good at that as he would have liked. But we had fun.
This is an excellent conversation about business because everything you said is the care and feeding of a good business.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was one of the few things we did for profit on the farm, because I don't, other than, occasionally he would, get in the corn and the soybeans in for money. When, I mean, he'd still be able to sell the field corn, but not for as much as he would if it was, human corn. So
Yeah. Did you was corn used for biofuel back then?
yes, I'm not so sure ours ever was, but there was that in the 80s. Yes.
Yeah. There's so much grown in the United States. It's really amazing how much agriculture we have. It's really fun. It's fun. I live in I live in Michigan, so
Hmm.
the other side of the
Right.
lake.
Yeah. I don't get up to visit our like I said, my parents moved while I was in law school, but I still have some former neighbors that will still stop in and visit if we happen to be driving by and see them out in the field still. Although more, I think it's his son that's taking care of the farm now. The one that I was used to dealing with is now retired. It's his son now that's the
In my previous episode, I was talking to Kristen Javago, and she said that 90% of businesses in the United States have less than 9 employees, and that's the family farm too.
right.
So, I mean, the family farm is part of the backbone of the word is escaping my mouth. Economy.
There
Economy.
you go.
How can I not get the word economy out of my mouth? I mean, it really is the backbone of the economy of the United States. So thank you for participating in that, even though it's just a hobby.
So certainly not as much for profit as our neighbors. We have some neighbors that had everything from, hogs to cows to tobacco to their own corn, their own soybeans. That was definitely everything was for profit. We have to laugh now. Like my son and my mother started watching Clarkson's Farm, and we just had to laugh at that.
I've seen that
Nothing
television
ever
show.
goes right for that man.
So Clarkston's Farm, in case you don't watch BBC television, Clarkston's Farm is the guy is like a really famous BBC guy, right? He's a
Yeah, he does a lot of their sports car. It's on Top Gear, I think, and some of those other shows.
so he decided to start a farm. It is a fascinating. It's kind of documentary, real
Right.
true. What's it's not
Yeah, it's like
reality TV.
it's kind of that, you know that that they know when the cameras are running,
Yeah.
but it's nothing ever goes well for that man.
Well, when you're a race car driver or in the race car industry, and then you start a farm,
Right.
you know, but it is really interesting. And spoiler alert, they do make a go of it. I mean,
Right. Right.
so if you're interested in what it's like to be a farmer in England,
Right. Right. Exactly.
it's pretty interesting. I watched that a couple of years ago. I am not a reality TV show person, but something about that particular show was very interesting to me because it was so unique and interesting, right? It wasn't like, I have no interest in watching celebrity families yell at each other or get drunk, right? But
Hmm.
this guy, he was doing something, he was challenging himself. I mean, at some
Right.
point he even tried to grow wasabi plants. He tried to grow wasabi plants in England. Spoiler alert, he failed miserably. But he was really trying. He was really
Right.
experimenting. It was, you know, anyway.
Hmm.
Anyway, okay, so let's talk about AI and copyright.
Awesome. Happy
Uh,
to.
All right. Alleviate everybody's fears. Can you?
Well, probably depends on how reasonable their fears are. In terms of it being something like the it's escaping me at the moment. From Terminator, the
Oh,
there
Skynet. Skynet.
Skynet. Yeah, there we go. That's the name I was thinking of. It's not Skynet. What we think of as artificial intelligence these days isn't really an artificial intelligence, really, but it's more of an algorithm that's making generative output that is it seems lifelike and what it's something similar to what a human can do. So it's these generative AI models are certainly one of the current states of the computer development that we've had over the last few years, where things are coming out that are actually somewhat usable, and it can be used for all sorts of things. And it raises all sorts of interesting IP questions from like how the models are trained, to what they're trained on, to the uses of what's there, what's generated. There are lots of ways we could go with this. I wasn't sure how you wanted to go from here. If you wanted to ask a more specific question, I'm happy to.
I wanted just to see where you went with that. Honestly, I want to see where you went with that. So I have a confession to make. My last email that I sent out for my last, my emails that I send out telling people that the latest episode is out. The last one I sent out, I actually used AI to write the email,
Oh.
and a friend of mine sent me a message and said, "I see you used AI to write that email," and I'm like, "Ugh." so you can't get away with it. I mean, it's not good enough
Well,
yet.
I like to think of it as something that produces a nice first draft, that you can then take and edit and tweak and make it your own. I think that'll eventually get to the point where you can train a model to, knowing how Candace writes, and so then it can produce something that more somebody who knows you well won't be able to tell the difference. It's just going to take some more time and more generative development of this over time, where I think that can become possible. Really, what it does, these generative models, it's predicting what the next word should be based on its model and its algorithm, and so it's writing a sentence one word at a time, essentially, as it's generating the output. And at least that's the way most of them work. Some of them others might do more than one word at a time, but generally speaking, that's what they're doing, is a word at a time, is generating a sentence uh, based on its knowledge of the human language, its knowledge of the typical types of letters that people will write when they're sending out announcements of podcast episodes. These are the types of things you might include, such as the name of the podcast, the title, who was on it, those types of details, and then fill in the rest with predictive words. These are the types of words, such as, we had on a guest who was named. Okay, this is where the name goes, and it's generating based on that type of a model, and it is. I think that'll eventually get to the point where it can be, a useful actual. You don't even have to monitor it, but it's going to be a long time, and I'm not even sure we really want to get there. I think they're good tools.
You're absolutely right. And I did make some slight edits to the AI outputted copy, but I did not make a lot of changes to it. And it was pretty obvious. But I mean, I have noticed that it uses words like delve and words that most Americans don't normally use in an everyday, conversation.
Mm.
AI is picking up those words. I think most people who are listening to this podcast are really concerned about is if they're an artist, how do they know that their art isn't being stolen by AI? If they're an artist or a writer, how do they know that their job isn't going to be taken over by an AI in the future? And thank you very much for actually explaining what a generative AI is, because that was the first time I'd had it explained to me in such a easy to understand way. So
Oh,
thank you for that.
sure. It, do I think people need to worry about their jobs? Probably depends on what their job is, but for the most part, I think AI tools, as they currently exist, are things that are going to be eventually used to make things can be done faster and better, and take sort of shift the load, is the way I like to think of it. Many years ago, people would, they would type out business correspondence on a typewriter using carbon copy paper. And to make multiple copies, they had to have the carbon in between, and but that was state of the art technology at the time, which a lot of it got replaced by computers. Once computers got much more usable and accessible and affordable, I think it's similar to that type of a technology transition, where we're merely going to be shifting the writing part of it, the generative part of it, to some of these types of tools, and it's still going to require a human to look at it and approve it and tweak it and send it out. I don't think the way these tools generally exist, I don't think they're going to be smart enough to replace a human, but it might reduce the number of people that are needed. We used to have one of the law firms I worked at when I was in law school. They had a huge department of people. All they did all day was fax. They fax things because lawyers to correspond, you faxed everything. You didn't have email. That was not a thing. And so you would generate a letter and you'd send a physical copy, but you'd also fax a copy, so they got it right away. So you'd send these, 100 pages of fax, and they had to have a group of people. And those people eventually had to be transitioned into other jobs because there was no longer a need for a fax department.
Can I
they
be
got,
can
yeah,
I be controversial here for a second?
sure.
Having worked in corporate America during the 90s, I really believe that fax machines were more efficient than email because you got the printed copy right away, right?
Right. Hmm.
And maybe there may be some AI technology that happens in the next 10 or 20 years where they can actually read a PO that a customer sends you and take that PO and translate it into your data processing system. But as it is now, if you send in an order to a company through an email, they need to print it and then they need to look at it and enter it into their system so that the order can get processed. So it added an extra step for, I mean, unless I'm wrong. I mean, I haven't worked in corporate America since the 90s, so I could be wrong. There could be systems that are better.
Yeah,
But
it probably depends on how the order is generated, but yeah, I certainly see certain models where that is the case, where somebody needs to print it and then turn it around. I can know some other systems where it can be more seamlessly entered in on the other end. But would that job be taken over by AI, where the AI generative model is generating the input to go into your own ordering system? Possibly, but then you would still need somebody to look it over, make sure that they actually want 1,000 units of this thing
yeah,
versus 100 units.
and you just nailed it. Even with AI and robot, well, I have a robot. I want to talk about robots in a minute too.
Sure.
But even with stuff like that, you still need a human to look at it to make sure it's correct.
Right. And whether it makes logical sense, it's like, is this really what this is purporting to be? Is this really an order for 1,000 units? Or, why are they ordering 1,000? Most of our customers order 10, or most of our customers order 100. Why is this one all of a sudden 1,000? You know,
In the early 90s, I knew a dude. He worked in this automotive factory, and he told me once that something broke. And so he climbed up on the machine, hung upside down, and tried to fix it. And this was before robotics. I mean, it might have been right when robots were coming in to build these cars, but that just didn't sound safe to me. Right.
right.
so, so robots coming into these automotive factories and taking over some of these assembly jobs helped with safety, but you still need a human.
Yeah, somebody has to take care of the robot also. Somebody has to maintain the robot. Somebody has to lubricate the robot, all the other things, the maintenance, all that. So there's certainly people for that. I think, in the automotive industry, I think robots certainly helped a lot to some repetitive stress injuries that happened to people, and, quality of life got better for the people. I feel real sorry for, you see these horrible pictures of some of these chicken processing plants, in other parts of the world, where their working conditions are just terrible because, it's just an assembly line of, chicken, this, butchery, that they've got to do this. And it's repetitive, it's dangerous, and it's a job that could probably be done by automation a lot better in the long run. But assuming people are willing to put in the money to to automate and do that, I think then working conditions can improve in those types of cases. But it I think the point I was trying to get to, I think, is that the AI tools, I think, are simply that, a tool. that could be used to improve certain parts of people's jobs. But will they replace all jobs? No, no, but it might replace but poor chicken worker on the line who's got to make this one particular cut with a knife repetitively again and again and again. And if they get tired, they get forgetful, they miss something, that's when it gets really dangerous. So I think it replace those types of jobs. At the same time, it's going to create other ones, or allow people to, like those fax people, the former firm that I'd worked at, those fax people became the computer support people. They got educated, they got sent off to school to become the support technicians for the computer systems, or they got transferred over into other jobs within the firm. I'm not aware of anybody significantly in that particular instance that got let go. Just sorry, we don't need faxes anymore, you're out of a job. They were happy to, you put in your time with the company, they were happy to train you and put you in. Hopefully people are in those types of places where that can happen, or they're the types of bosses, the entrepreneurs that can make that happen.
Imagine going to school, getting your degree, getting hired by a company, and you're told that here's your job, you're going to fax all day.
Right. Yeah.
No, there's
Yeah.
skills, there's better skill sets, right?
Right.
Better thing
Right.
to do. I'm so glad we moved away from the chicken conversation.
Sorry. We were talking about animals earlier and
Yeah.
the farm stuff.
Yeah,
So
I know.
my
So it
mind
just
went there.
AI and chickens. What a combination.
Onwards.
So there is a meme going around that says that I want AI to do the dishes and vacuum the floors so that I can create art and write books, right? And right now AI is creating art, creating graphics. It's not art. Creating graphics and outputting written thing, but there are robotic vacuum cleaners.
Right. Yeah. And you can have a hopefully someday have better tools that'll help you do those other types of chores, to do the dishes, to do I mean, admittedly a dishwasher is a big help, but you still have to put the dishes in, you still have to put them out. If we could get a robotic assistant that was smart enough to put things away without breaking them, and capable of applying the right pressure on a piece of china versus a piece of glass versus stainless steel pan, that could certainly be a nice addition. Get your own little C3PO or something to get you through there.
Imagine an AI garbage can that automatically sorted your compostables, your trash, and your recyclables.
Ooh.
Somebody please invent that.
Oh, there you go.
And that composts it for you.
Oh, right. Yes, of course.
Somebody
Mhm.
invent this, please. you know?
Sure.
And then give me a kickback. So let's get back to art because I'm married to, this is personal. I'm married to an artist, a working artist, and I have a daughter who's an artist. And my daughter who's an artist is also a paleontologist who doesn't want to pursue art as a career
Okay.
because, she grew up in a time where stuff like AI, I mean, she's 26 years old. And I mean, AI seems to be pretty new, but digital art has been stolen. And
Yeah, there's some interesting cases going on about those right now. Yes.
can we give them some hope that all this is going to settle out and they'll be able to keep creating without worrying about their personal things being stolen? Or
I kind of hope that we'll eventually settle to some industry best practices. Right now, there's a lot of cases that have been filed, but nothing's been, come to conclusion. There aren't any judgments. There aren't any, final decisions in any of these lawsuits. There's just been a lot of filings. So I think we're still early on that. I think it's going to be a while before there's any sort of generally accepted principles of what an AI model can be trained on. There are some that seem to take the belief that if it's publicly posted to the internet, we can scrape that for training our model. And then there's other people that say, no, we still need a license, and they'll only, if they'll only train the models on the ones they have a license for. I think that's a much more sustainable model, personally, in the long run, personal opinion here, than the first model. Being able to, defend it. That's a look, we think that our model is going to create output that's based on these other words, with making what we would call a derivative work in the copyright parlance. It's going to be making derivative work, so therefore we need a license from the original artist to create these derivative
Oh,
works from. And so I think that's a very defensible position
yeah.
to
And
make.
it's a win-win.
Right, and it supports the artist, assuming that the artist is being compensated properly. They're getting the correct amount, and that stuff's only going to be settled out over time. I, I'm not aware how much right now some of these models are paying, and I don't have specific figures, but I can only presume it's probably not enough from the artist standpoint.
Yeah, but the
Uh,
art for a lot of artists make pennies on a play, If their song is
right,
played on the radio, they might make 5 cents. Pennies
right,
on a play is still better than zero,
right,
you know.
right. Yeah,
But yeah, so I may have this wrong, and you're the IP guy, so you probably know. Didn't Michael Jackson buy the songbook for the Beatles? Like,
yes, he did.
okay, so if whoever owns Michael Jackson's property now, whoever is managing the Michael Jackson song archive that he owned now,
Hmm.
if AI has a licensing agreement with that company and outputs a song based on, I want a song that sounds like it would have been the Beatles from the early 1970s, where John Lennon was this lead singer, right? If that was the AI, and it's about love or something, right? If that was the prompt that was fed into this music AI generator, unfortunately, the original artist isn't going to get any of that because they don't own the rights to their music anymore.
That is a particular application of what the state of the music industry is, which is that a lot of the people don't realize that a lot of the artists don't own, the ultimate, the recording. There's different copyrights that exist for different works. Probably go back and explain a little bit. You might write the music, in which case you have a copyright in the underlying composition, and there's also a particular uh, uh, copyright in the actual sound recording, the actual recording that's made on the day, or what's mixed and released as the song. That particular sound recording has a separate copyright apart from the composition. So like a cover band, when the cover band is performing a particular song, let's say they want to do, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, they're paying an underlying license to the rights holder, which might still be Apple Music. I don't know if they still. When I say Apple, I'm talking about the original Apple, the Beatles. They may not realize that was the name of Apple Records, was their album, that they released all their stuff under. When
Really?
Yeah, when Apple Computer
Producer?
came out with the iPod, no, that was the name of their company, Apple Records. When Apple Music came out, sorry, when Apple Computer came out with the iPod, they had to pay a lot of money to them, because they'd originally agreed, when they started doing Apple Computer, never to get in the music business. Um, and so they violated their own agreement to never get into that, but that's another matter. Um,
So
but so
did
anyways,
Michael Jackson buy the Apple Music company or
no, he bought the rights to the sound recordings.
the sound recordings? Okay.
He has the rights to the sound recordings. So, so like so Paul McCartney and them, I don't believe, ever gave up the rights to the particular
Oh,
underlying compositions. I don't
okay.
believe. I could be wrong. I love the Beatles, but if I've got these details incorrect, please, I apologize. But that's my understanding, is that what Michael bought was the sound recordings, the particular sound recordings that were made, and the right to monetize those.
So there's so many nuances to intellectual property that we
Right, there
don't,
are.
which is why we need someone like you.
Right. Um, so that, for example, that's why Taylor Swift released her versions of these albums that originally were recorded, and the masters were held by somebody else, and that other somebody else refused to sell back to her the rights to those particular sound recordings. So she created her own re-recordings of her albums in Taylor's version, and that's why she did that. It's for a copyright reason. This way she was compensated for the playing of those records, as opposed to this other person that she no longer wanted to be in business with.
What a brilliant young businesswoman she is.
I would agree.
She
Uh,
she is super intelligent.
mhm, I
Yeah.
would agree. She's quite smart.
I mean, how many artists would have, I mean, why didn't Prince just do that?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that just can't afford that. Just to go back into it's costs a lot of money to go back in the studio. It's recording time is very, very precious.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money. If you own your own studio, that's one thing, but most people don't.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know what? It's a model though for the future for I mean, because when you're 18, 17 years old, you have no idea what the future holds. And
right,
I'm sure that I mean, was she was probably 14 when she released her first song, right? So she had no idea at 14 that she was going to become this. I mean, Taylor Swift is a person of her own in her own,
right,
she is
yeah,
she it transcends megastardom, right?
right,
So she had no idea when she was 14 that that was going to happen. So she didn't know. Nobody knew. Her parents didn't know. No one knew what was going to happen. But now she's created this formula for other artists who have meteoric rises and have the same thing happen to them if they don't want to work with their original producing company anymore, or whatever, production company, or whatever it is the word is. I'm not we're neither of us are in the music industry. Whatever it is, that now they know that they can release their own version of the song just the way Taylor did.
right. There's certainly a valid methodology. Able to make another different sound recording that they're able to control to. So that way, she gets the rights. Again, pennies on the play,
Yeah.
but that's money is going to her, as opposed to going to the former producer that she no longer wanted to be associated with.
How fascinating. Wow. I, I,
Yeah.
I just love it when you're talking to someone and you have no idea where the conversation is going to go. Taylor Swift,
So
dead chickens.
there you go.
I love it. All right. So, how does an artist or a creator, like a writer, protect their property? What is the best thing for someone who wants to make sure that they don't have to deal with this crap in the future? What can they do today to protect their property, their intellectual property?
Well, there's a couple good things that already, but just a matter of law, statutory law. When creative works are created and they're fixed in what's called a tangible medium of expression. Again, this is statutory language here. So those when you hit save on a digital file, when you hit, um, you know, print on, whatever it is that you're doing, you've saved it in a tangible medium. You've recorded to computer. You're writing it to a piece of paper. You're putting pen to paper. You're putting ink, or pigment to canvas, then you have created a work. Copyright exists automatically for the moment of fixation. So you have copyright exists, but it's just a matter of what's the proper compensation then for an infringement. If the work is registered with the Copyright Office before the infringement occurred, you can get what's called statutory damages or attorney's fees for that. So statutory damages is a regime that's there to compensate people in ways that otherwise you're limited to your actual damages. So you don't really know how to quantify those. What your actual damages are for somebody ripping off your creative expression. You have the statutory damages regime, which is up to $30,000 for regular infringement, or up to $150,000 for willful infringement. And so that's one of the reasons that somebody might want to register the copyright if they think there's a decent chance that they're going to be infringed. It's not a bad idea. There's ways to do that in things that are relatively straightforward. Like photographers, you can do these batch registrations of all the photos that are taken in the last 3 months, things like that. So different methodologies that somebody might use to register a lot of images in one filing, so that they only have to do that periodically, and then each photograph is protected. Certainly, if you write a book, it's you think it's a decent chance that somebody's going to rip off your book. Then by all means register with the Copyright Office. But the regime it's set up to be fairly straightforward. You don't necessarily have to hire a lawyer to register with the Copyright Office. The design forms are designed to be simple, that can be filed online. We do it for our people. We charge flat rates, for doing that, because it's a relatively straightforward process. But again, they're paying far more for the attorney time than they are the $65. I think there's 75. Anyways, the fees that they pay to the Copyright Office are a lot less than what they'd be paying the lawyer, to if they're doing that themselves. But they're relatively straightforward if they want to do that. There's certain old wives' tales when it comes to copyright. Used to be there
I was
was
going to
this.
ask you about this. I hope you're about to say what I think I was going to ask you about.
Like
Let me
people
hear
would
it.
say, if you would mail yourself a
Okay.
copy of the work, that could be used to justify. And like, no, that really doesn't prove anything other than you mailed an envelope. It doesn't prove what was in the envelope at the time, because somebody could have mailed themselves an empty envelope, and then all of a sudden decided to slip something else into it and
Mm-mm.
seal it. You don't know if it was in the envelope when it was mailed.
Okay.
So it doesn't really prove anything other than that physical envelope was mailed or stamped at a particular time. It doesn't necessarily mean that the contents, were there. So,
Conspiracy
this
theory.
poor man's
Conspiracy theory. No, I'm just kidding.
right. But it's saying that's one of the reasons that courts don't accept that,
Okay.
is it doesn't really prove what people think it proves. I
So,
mean, it's
so
yeah.
if I'm hearing you correctly, you are saying that an artist, a painter, a sketch artist, should copyright their art.
They should register the copyright if they think there's a chance, whether it's worth it to them, because not everything is going to be infringed, so I think it's a business choice by the artist to decide whether it's worth the expense to register a particular thing. Do I recommend that our clients register the copyright in everything? No. Do we usually, talk things through, in terms of like what's the cost benefit? But certainly if it's a significant enough ultimate piece that's created, like that they finished a book, some sort of manuscript, some sort of finished piece of art, something that they think is a work in and of itself, that would be separate and apart from their other things. Doesn't necessarily mean like a business needs to copyright every brochure that it does. Register the copyright. I mean, because they
Yeah.
have copyright automatically, but what's used to register
Okay.
is the other manner. Like
So let me tell you a story.
sure.
In the before time, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, my husband and I had a custom furniture business. And one of our colleagues who also owned a custom furniture business in the same genre but different style, she sent me an email and she goes, "Hey, Kandas, I think this looks like you guys made this, but somebody else is using your photographs to sell furniture." So I went and looked, and lo and behold, our photographs from our website were on their website, and they were selling it as if they had made it. And I just contacted him and said, "Hey, you are using our photographs on your website. Take them down." And he's all, "I don't know what the big deal is. It's the same product." I'm like, "No, it's not, because you didn't make that. What should we have done instead?"
Um, well, I think so certainly if you're the ones that took the photographs of that particular product, then by all means, then you own that copyright in that particular work, whether you registered or not. And I think that's very sensible to get them to just try to take it down. And this issue comes up a lot in online stores, even today, where people are selling things on eBay and other places and using other people's photographs to populate, take the quick and easy way to populate. It's one thing if you're getting the photographs directly from the vendor. The vendor says, here's photographs of our product, use these to sell our product. That's one thing, you're getting the license. But if you're, taking somebody else's work, there's an old adage in copyright law, like if you've got two people taking the same picture of the same sunset standing next to each other, they each have separate copyright in the photographs that they've taken, but they certainly would look very similar. But they each would have, separately, assuming they met the other elements for registration, they would certainly have, copyright in that particular work. It'd be narrow. The scope of protection that would be there would be narrow, versus somebody else's work. But to the extent that there was anything original in that particular expression, that would be protectable. It's important to remember that copyright protects original expression, not the underlying concept or idea. So the concept of having these product photographs is not protected, but those particular photographs are. It's the arrangement, it's the style, it's the lighting, all those things that come together to form that product photograph. That's the originality that would be protected by that particular photograph.
Yeah, and we understood we were making reproduction furniture, so we were copying we were making our version of a piece of furniture that was made by a craftsman 200 years ago, right? But
Right.
they were using our photo of the product that we made.
Right. And see, it's your arrangement, your style, your selection, your choice of lighting,
Our
the
paint
time of day
finishes,
you
yeah,
took the time of
yeah.
day you took it. And it's ultimately, it's a bit of deceptiveness if it's you're each creating separate reproduction. How do you know that this person is generating something that actually looks like the product? They could be harming your business by creating an inferior knockoff of the other thing. I'm thinking of some of these people, like they they'll produce something that is also looks like some of these knockoff things that might be there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's as good a quality.
Yeah.
you know
Well, I wear wigs. I mean, obviously, I have pink hair. Obviously, I wear wigs. And I have noticed that there are on Amazon, there are wig companies that are using the really expensive brands' photographs to sell their cheap knockoff wigs. And I'm really surprised that those big brands are letting them get away with that.
hmm.
I
Question would be whether they're aware of that.
I don't know how they can't be. I mean, how they,
Yeah.
I'm sure corporations have people on staff to pay attention to this stuff. But if you are showing your cheap knockoff wig for $20 with a famous celebrity who wears wigs, I can't remember any names right now, but if that picture is on your cheap knockoff wig with the celebrity's head in it, that is
Mm.
completely copyright infringement, and I see it on Amazon all the time. So yeah, I mean, it just people don't, and they're probably in
Mhm.
another country, right? And not
Right.
respecting the
Yeah,
copyright laws
and
of the
and
United
and
States.
it's certainly not something Amazon's going to police, and that's not
No.
Amazon's concern. Amazon is much more concerned. That's why they've got the brand registry and things like that to make sure that like what they're trying to crack down on is getting the authentic product when you order the authentic product. Um, it's been a problem for them for a long time, and they're trying to get better at it. But that's why they've got this brand registry now, uh, so they could try to cut down. But it's certainly they're not going to look at the photographs that are there. That's up to the individual copyright
Raquel
owner.
Raquel Welch is the movie star that I was thinking of. So they
Ah,
have all
okay.
these Raquel Welch wigs. I mean, she has a wig line. I don't even know if she's still alive, but she has a wig line, right? And it's her photo, and with her wig, and they are selling it as if it's their own. Which
Mm.
that's not an Amazon thing. That is a Raquel Welch wig company thing, right?
That's yeah, they've got a lot of cheap knockoffs that they're going to have to figure out
Yeah.
how they're going to take down.
But Amazon's business model just makes it so easy for knockoffs to be sold because you it's not Amazon that's selling these products, it's an Amazon reseller. So, and there are thousands of them.
Right. And it's led to a lot of things, where they're creating these artificial brands to sell things under different Chinese manufacturers. You'll see like, this long string of letters that's, it's the brand that's selling this one particular product. And, if you search, you might find three or four different, companies selling the exact same product under different brands.
Hmm.
That happens a lot. Um, so uh it's it becomes the issue that they originally had was, some of these companies would supply some of these warehouses with a particular product, and Amazon would just fulfill the orders, with any of that product that was available at the nearest location, which weren't necessarily the authentic product. And that's what they're cracking down on with the brand registry, to bring a lot more this is that company's product. I'm only selling, the products that they upload to our warehouses. And when their supply is gone, that store shuts down and they don't fill the order with, somebody else's product, which might be infringing.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to crack down on with that. Again, it's the other issue there with the wig issue is more of that particular seller, needs probably to, police their brand a little better. And there's things that can be done, to enforce, against those sellers. Some of them work, some of them don't. Again, it's issues sometimes
Yeah.
is that they're not in the US, but you
Yeah.
might be able to kick them off Amazon until they come back under a different,
They'll just come back
five or
under a
six
different brand. Yeah.
letter string
Yeah.
brand.
They'll figure out ways to make money. They always do. All right. So we need to wrap up. Bottom line, what do creatives need to know to protect their intellectual property?
Um, I think they just need to know what types of things that they have. They might have a trademark, which is symbols used in commerce to identify the source of your goods and services. They might have a trade secret, which is the things that you hold secret, such as like the Coca-Cola secret formula, those types of things. They might have a patent, which is, something that protects the invention, that particular methodology. I'm not a patent attorney, but I know enough about patents to be dangerous. And then, there's copyright, which protects the original expression. And those are the four major areas. And within that regime, I think people should know that we have a robust system that's out there that can be taken advantage of, for their protection. It's not a perfect system, but it's a pretty decent system that, has been developed over time to promote science and the useful arts, which is the whole purpose of all this.
And maybe hire an intellectual property attorney.
Yeah, that would also be helpful. Yes. We can help you navigate all that.
All right. I've learned a lot today. Thank you, Kevin Thompson. This is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
I'd like to give some thanks to some people that have been great mentors to me over the years. Two in particular I'm thinking of are Marcia Hoover and Bill McGrath, partners of mine at one of my first firms. I went from associate to partner at Davis McGrath, and I really enjoyed working with them. And they were just great people to work with, and yeah, just good people all around, and really taught me not just how to be a good lawyer, but how to be a good advocate for our clients.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for grateful micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. To connect with Kevin Thompson, head over to the show notes at gratitudegeek.com. This is episode 237. I've been your host, Kandas Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.